Hello, everybody. How's it going, MC?
Hey Brian, I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I am just wonderful. The theme song always gets me going and ready to do our awesome Brews Less Traveled live stream here.
Yeah, it's jazzy. It's good.
Yeah, it sets the mood. Uh, gets it gets the blood flowing, gets me ready to drink some awesome beers, talk about awesome breweries, and yeah, it's awesome to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I've had a long but good week, so I'm ready for a couple of beers today, personally. What about you? Sounds like
I
you've
am
also had a long and good week.
I have had a long week, also a good week. I was traveling this past weekend, checking out cities that we're getting ready to feature on the podcast, which is a lot of fun. Trying a
So
lot of
exciting.
beers, but travel is always tiring. It's good to be home, and it's even better to be on the stream with everybody at home. How's everybody doing? Hopefully, everybody is having just as good of a night as MC and I.
A lot of
Uh,
familiar faces tonight, as always.
Absolutely. And
Love
as
to see our
always,
frequent guests.
yep, yep. Everybody in the chat, how's it going? Cool. Housekeeping? No.
Housekeeping, you guys know the drill by now. Make sure that your chat function is set to everyone so that we can all see your comments. Definitely have conversations, ask us questions in that chat. We'll try to keep a close eye on those so that we can answer your questions. We can get your questions to the guest. But it's also really fun to see you all just have a good time and converse amongst each other about what we're drinking, about where you are. Yeah, have fun, put it on everyone so that we can all participate.
Nice rhyme. We have another wonderful featured brewery from the great city of Kansas City tonight. We'll be tasting beers from Torn Label. We'll also be joined by a great guest from Torn Label, the CEO, and we'll bring him on in a minute here. But we got two beers to drink tonight. We have their brown ale as well as their alpha pale ale, and enough talk about the beers, enough talk about getting into drinking beers. Let's do it. Let's open our first beer here. We're going to start with the brown ale.
I'm excited to start with this brown ale, in this age of hoppy beers. You don't see a lot of like classic American brown ales.
Yeah, and it's such a great style mending, especially American brown ales,
Mhm.
mending the beauty of the hops with these subtle malt flavors and it coming together to form this 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 thing that you only find in good American brown
Yep,
ales.
that's true. Cheers.
Cheers to everybody at home. Cheers, MC. Oh, that is nice. The description from Torn Label reads a classic and highly quaffable take on the American brown ale, coming in at 5.4% ABV. Light roast and toast combine in this traditional style, perfect for the ups and downs of spring temperatures. It's 50 degrees here in Pittsburgh, so this is like the exact beer that I want to drink right
Perfect.
now.
Yeah, it was warm and rainy here in Missouri today. And like I see some folks in the chat getting ready to have a winter storm, we are too. So, this beer kind of runs the gamut. It can be kind of cozy and warm, but it's also, like you said, Brian, really nice for a nice spring day. So I am really liking this.
Yeah, there's a nice little bitterness to it coming from the hop character. Really smooth malt flavors.
Yeah,
Uh,
very well
I,
balanced.
if even if it was a little warmer outside, I could see this being nice and refreshing.
Oh yeah.
5.4% ABV, not too heavy. Mm.
Yeah, highly drinkable. Like I said, really cozy, really like I love those roasty, toasty flavors that aren't super deep and rich, just like light. little milk chocolatey there, a little like tobacco-y there.
Yeah, and as somebody said in the chat, definitely hoppier than an English brown. And I would say that's
Yes.
one of the real defining characteristics of an American brown versus an English brown. I mean, that seems to be the defining characteristic of every time we throw American
Yeah.
on it, like American stout. Oh, it's just,
Make it hoppier.
85 IBUs. Yeah.
Right.
American barley wine, it's 100 IBUs.
Yeah. I
I
like
think,
that about this. It's that hop character really like dries it out, gives it a nice sharp finish.
yeah, it is very well balanced. It's a beautiful marriage of multi flavors and hop flavors without being over the top on either of those. And there might even be a little touch of fermentation character in there, a little bit of estery kind of bringing
Mm.
everything together. Maybe just for me.
I'm going to let mine warm up for a little bit. I'm kind of drinking it quickly, I'm realizing, because it's very drinkable. So I'm going to hold it in my hands, let it warm up, see if I can get some of those fruity, fermenty characteristics you're getting, Brian.
It could also be because I just had a vanilla Coke with my dinner, and my
Oh,
palate
well,
could
that
just
might
be
do it.
not, just picking up things that are weird. Either way, I am certainly enjoying this beer. And beer isn't the only thing that we include in our wonderful beer club boxes. I want to take a second to point out the awesome postcard that our marketing team put together, this awesome Kansas City thing. It is doing a number to my green screen. This is great podcast entertainment, visual comedy for all the folks listening home. Be sure to check those out inside of your box. Our marketing team does excellent work on these, as well as the beautiful brew map that includes many of the Kansas City breweries in that area.
Such a great brew map. I mean, you'll see like beyond the breweries we're talking about, there are so many great breweries in Kansas City. And you'll also notice, we are talking about Torn Label, which, like our old friends from City Barrel, you'll remember, are also, they're both down there in the Crossroads district. And you can look around on your map there and see that that is a very popular spot for breweries, a really great beer community going on down there. So if you ever get a chance to get to Kansas City, there's a lot of awesome stuff to check out, but the Crossroads District is a great place to go have many wonderful beers.
Yeah, it seems like a real hot spot
Yeah.
for breweries in Kansas City. And, well, I think it's a great time to bring on our guests so we can talk more about that neighborhood, talk more about Torn Label and these awesome beers we're drinking tonight. So please, everyone, join me in welcoming the CEO of Torn Label, Rafi Chaudry. I really hope I got that last name right. I
You
have,
got it.
like,
Usually there's a learning curve, but you actually nailed it the first time out. So impressive.
Good job,
beautiful.
Brian.
Thanks
Hey,
so
guys.
much for joining us. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And good to be with everyone tonight.
That's awesome. So first off, I read that Torn Label recently celebrated their 7-year anniversary. So congrats on 7 years. Can you start off by talking about how Torn Label has grown over those 7 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is amazing every time I hear that back. I know it's true, but it doesn't actually seem like that. If this makes sense, 7 years simultaneously feels like way longer and way less time, just because longer
Yeah.
because we were kind of conceiving of it, developing it, planning it for so long before that, but then shorter because I really remember those launch week events when we opened, like it happened last week. So it does seem very surreal to be at 7 years. But yeah, we started as a distribution brewery. We had we shipped our first kegs right at the end of 2014, and then had a bunch of launch weeks around the city in Kansas City in 2015. And yeah, it was really kind of beers that we sent out around the city for distribution. We opened in terms of growth, expansion, next steps, that sort of thing. We started distributing kegs. We started bottling a little bit in the early days, and then the next big thing was our tap room, which you guys have a very nice looking green screen behind you. I didn't realize it snuck in there. that was the kind of first little next thing to happen, which was really exciting for us. It has kind of a nice kind of a fun speakeasy kind of cozy feel to it. And after maybe another year or so, year and a half, we started to can our beers, which is, of course, what you guys are enjoying right now. Which was, that was a huge step for us. Bottling was great, but we were, literally doing it the way I'm sure all of you or many of you are familiar with, just the kind of homebrewing way. It was basically a homebrewing bottling rig that our brewmaster built himself, and capping and filling 22-ounce bottles ourselves. And we had to take a next step, and we were wanting to do enough beer where that was not going to cut it for canning and releasing our year-round flagship. So we brought in a canning line a couple of years later, expanded distribution just a little bit. We still have a pretty tight distribution area. We basically stick within the KC city primarily, but we're out in Missouri and Kansas. So Kansas side, we're kind of out as far as like Lawrence and Wichita. Missouri side as far as Springfield, but we really just kind of try to keep things around KC, just because we obviously we're proud of our hometown, and we love to get the beer out as fresh and as in great shape as possible to people around the city. But that's why it was really fun to actually participate in this, just because we don't distribute around that very limited area normally. So it was a lot of fun to be able to share our beer with people who normally don't have access to it. But yeah, so expanded distribution. And then the next really big thing was just this last year, last spring, opened Turn Lable Public House, which is an expansion, so a larger space that also includes a restaurant concept as well. So we're doing food, we're doing more space, we're doing kind of a little more of a gathering spot than we had. Our tap room, our kind of OG tap room is great. We love it. We still use it sometimes, but it's a 28-person maximum occupancy. So we kind of hit a wall pretty quickly on what you can do with that. So this next space, the public house,
a little more room.
A little more room to spread out, and really happy with how the food's going in the kitchen program so far right now. So so it's been an exciting ride for sure.
That's great. Yeah, I understand what you're saying about it. It feels longer than 7 years and shorter than 7 years. Sounds like you've had a lot going on. And so can I ask real fast, is the public house also in the Crossroads, or is that just the tap room?
It is, yeah. So it's both the public house, tap room, and brewery. It's all in the same building. So we have the south section of a building that we lease. It's the Studios Inc. building, which is, so if you're not from KC, the Crossroads, as you mentioned, it's become kind of a really great, amazing brewery hotspot. It's I'm biased, of course, but it's the place to visit, I think, if you ever are able to visit KC. Traditionally, it's been the arts district. That was kind of what it was there for back when I was growing up, back when we were, me and our brewmaster owners were growing up. It was the kind of gallery arts district, and still is very much known for that. It's still what people kind of come out, one of the things that people come out there for. So our building is Studios Inc., which is a nonprofit artist workspace and exhibition space. So they have donated workspaces for artists, and they have solo shows, group shows, that sort of thing. So we basically lease our space from them, but we also open directly to their gallery. So people can kind of come in when they're open and kind of flow back and forth and have a beer and check out some of the art. And, we never have to look far for inspiration. We're in the Crossroads Arts District, but literally sharing a space with some amazing artists in the city and in the region. So we do a series every now and then, our artist series, where we collaborate with the artists in a beer, where the inspiration is either sometimes very direct, sometimes very, very abstract in terms of how they're connected. But that's been really fun, just to kind of be so connected with the art scene. But yeah, the Crossroads neighborhood, the new public house side, everything basically is there, and we love being there.
Yeah, so obviously it means a lot being in that neighborhood, that you would put your expansion in that neighborhood and stay there. What does it mean being a part of that arts district?
It was really great to be able to grow within that same space. It's we had other thoughts of potentially looking elsewhere, the same way we did when we were looking for a space. We looked all over the city, kind of far and wide in terms of a good fit for us. And the Crossroads is really kind of always the dream location. And it's only gotten better since we moved in here. When we opened, there was things really start to take off around that year. Basically, we opened in distribution, and then we opened our tap room about 6 months later in the summer. And there was 3 breweries actually, including us. So there's us, and then Double Shift and Border Brewing that opened our tap rooms right around literally the same 3-week period in I think July or August of that same year. All of us within like basically a half-mile radius of each other. So that was really cool and meaningful to be a part of that community, just because it is something that, hadn't really existed in KC. We were a little bit later, to be honest, in terms of the brewery scene really exploding. So to kind of come up in that neighborhood was great. And then we saw new entries like City Barrel and KCBC actually was a little bit before us. But the Crossroads, at this point, there's about a dozen breweries within maybe about a 2-mile or so walkable kind of little, actually less than that, like a 1.5-mile radius in that neighborhood. And they're all just, it's a great, friendly, collaborative scene. All of us are doing something a little bit different, and we all just love, to hang out and drink each other's beer. So we certainly wanted to remain part of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like a really great beer community down there. It seems super supportive. Sounds really special to be a part of. So we've talked a little bit about the public house opening. It opened recently. It includes a food menu from Kansas City chef Vince Brink. So what would you say is the most exciting part of adding that food component to the brewery?
Really, it's just that we decided to or wanted to approach our food program, our kitchen, the same way that we approach our beer program, which is, really the idea is to kind of let, for me, is to let our brewmaster have as much freedom and to kind of just do, there's always things that we are going to be doing all the time and that people come back to because they love that and they love what it is and the familiarity and enjoy it. But we also just want to have fun and do something experimental and different. And Vince was such a great find for us. He came to us as a sous chef from Corvino Supper Club, which is an amazing, it's Casey's only James Beard nominated restaurant. So he has some, serious credentials behind him. And like I said, we were just extremely lucky that he's been kind of a person on the same wavelength in terms of just not just kind of in really every aspect, food, personality, creativity, everything. So, we have, like I said, things that we do all the time and things that people come back for, but anything that he kind of gets the inclination to want to play around with and have fun with, we love that just because that keeps it interesting for him, which keeps it interesting for us and for our customers too. So it's always a little bit different. And I know, if you're looking for a super consistent menu that does not change and it's going to be, the same thing from, 1 month or, 1 year to that's not our place. It'll probably be very different, 1 week to the next, but that's kind of the fun of it for us.
Cool. Yeah. And I imagine it's challenging as well as fun. Can you tell us a little bit about any challenges that you've come across adding that food component?
Oh, sure. Really opening it when we did was, for obvious reasons. So we opened the public house and the expansion opened in April of last year. And we literally got the approval on our bank loan for that. We've been kind of developing that concept and hoping to expand, and we got the bank loan approval as things were sort of shutting down really intensely for COVID right in that March 2020, 1 week span of days. And we paused and considered if this still made sense or if it was crazy to do. But, we thought, we'd put this much work and planning into it. And we also felt like whatever happens, whatever the world is like, more space is probably going to be a good thing, and more room to spread out is probably going to be desirable for us to have, which certainly is the case. So, really, I think that it's probably no different in a lot of ways, us just opening, but the same as for a lot of restaurant, bar, breweries that are open to the public, of just kind of navigating and really just kind of adapting and being able to have the flexibility of responding to kind of what's going on out there, just because it was never a predictable world, but it's probably gotten, I think, much, much less predictable the last couple of years. So, we've just had to be able to kind of just go with the flow a little bit.
Awesome. So I just finished my brown ale. I think it's a good time to open up our second beer here. Let's get more into this Alpha Pale Ale. Rafi, could you tell us more about this beer?
Absolutely. Can talk about Alpha Pale all day long. The two we sent you. So we do 4 beers year round. Alpha Pale Ale, Monk and Honey, which is a Belgian blonde ale with honey, House Brew, which is a coffee wheat stout, and Hang 'em High, which is rotating hop IPA. Alpha Pale, our hoppy pale ale, that is the one of, even among our flagships, it's of our core beers, it's kind of our flagship. It's the one that keeps the lights on for us. It's the one that we do probably 50% or so of our production is alpha. Any given day, and you walk in, if you guess that it's an alpha brew day, you have a pretty good chance of being right. Which is, we didn't really, we started with the 4 year round beers. We didn't really know exactly, we wanted to do those ones year round. We didn't know if one of them would kind of take the lead, and if we had a chance to pick one that we'd like it to be, I think it would have been alpha, just because this is the one that it's our kind of work session shift beer. It's the one that we drink the most of, so it's great that people kind of latched onto it in the same way that we did ourselves, really. So really the idea of Alpha Pale, it's a kind of a session beer for hop heads. It's you could call it a session IPA. That's reasonable terminology. We call it alpha. It seems like in some ways that a session IPA kind of like brings down the term IPA in some ways. So we call it alpha pale because it feels like that way it bumps up a pale ale. But yeah, it's essentially, it's a sessionable pale ale, 5.6% ABV. So not super strong, one you could have a couple pints of for a session, but we hop it like a big old school IPA, so it gets its kind of a big wallop of hops. It's a little, I wouldn't say traditional, but it does kind of, when we opened, especially, my background before I moved back to Casey to start the brewery, I was living in Southern California. And so obviously your West Coast IPAs are your way of life out there. So it's all Pacific Northwest hops. It's some Falconer's Flight, some Summit, and some CTZ, which are great. And, we just, it does have, you get your little, your bitterness in there, but at the same time, those are also your very kind of citrusy, grapefruit, mandarin kind of hops too. I think that's the bitterness is I think on point, but at the same time, you have a big, I think you have a big amount of kind of breakfast fruit overtones to it as well.
Yeah, and the can art is awesome, and both of the can art, the can art on the brown ale and on this Alpha Pale is great. I'm guessing there's some kind of collaboration you do with artists with these can labels.
Yeah, so the Alpha Pale and kind of some of our original early branding stuff and design stuff is by an amazing local graphic artist named Leslie Hunt. So she did the artwork for Alpha, and as well as our logo and a bunch of stuff that's just kind of everywhere throughout our aesthetic. And then Brown Ale is it's really fun. It's so our full-time sales rep, Thomas Woodward, he is an artist as well. He was a graduate of the Kansas City Art Institute, and he is an amazing painter. So he has kind of come to do a lot of our sort of limited release, special release beers, and he's just got his own fun aesthetic that kind of is, he can kind of do a lot of different things, playful and more kind of painterly, that sort of thing. So we love to use his stuff. And really, maybe our most popular beer was actually, as I mentioned, kind of inspired, or a beer that was brewed in that series of collaboration with local artists. We thought, again, kind of to do a beer that was in tandem with an artist, we don't need to look far. Thomas is our rep, and he's an amazing artist. So he has a painting called Magic, and it's a really wonderful piece, super just colorful and vibrant and dynamic. And Travis Moore, our brewmaster, and him started talking, and it was really just, like I said, some of them are super abstract. Nothing about the painting would suggest a beer, really, so they really just kind of got in the weeds in terms of just like, what does this feel like to you? So it ended up being an IPA, a hazy IPA with raspberry and lemon peel that we do once a year in April. And that's probably still our most popular as far as limited releases go. That's the one that people still kind of go a little crazy for.
I just tried to pull up a picture of Magic Magic, the painting you referenced, and I just searched Magic Magic, and it came up with a picture of Michael Cera. I guess it's from a movie, so that's probably not the right thing. Oh, I have it here. This is beautiful can art. Just for our podcast listeners at home, go look up the labels for these cans. The brown ale looks like a hand sketch. It's beautiful, it's classy, and the Alpha Pale Ale is like this crazy neon light version of like a hawk grabbing hops, or I guess it would be a falcon because they're Falconer's Flight hops.
Right.
Yeah, but both very cool cans and very different styles between the two of them.
Yeah, I love that classic look of the brown ale. Looks, just like brown ales are kind of not super, dare I say, fashionable these days. It kind of
Yep.
uh, goes right along with the theme of the brown ale of like
Yep.
kind of an older style can, really simple. I love that.
No, that's great. That's exactly what we were sort of hoping for and going for in that. And that was actually, as you mentioned, it was just our 7th anniversary. We brewed the brown ale for the first time for our 6th anniversary last year. And it was kind of a little bit of a victory lap. We had done so much. And, at that time we, had survived, a very tough, obviously COVID year. And, we do so many out there, beers with a lot of just, interesting, kind of challenging, creative elements, but at the same time, we also just love to kind of do something a bit more traditional. And a brown ale, an American brown ale, was just a little classic. And we kind of wanted to go back to the basics for it and just do something that felt a little bit nostalgic. And the label itself, like you said, is sort of points to that too. It's one that kind of kind of points to our brewing equipment and just being able to kind of be around for this long and to be able to say that, it's great. We love to do our weird stuff and kind of our pushing the boundaries, but at the same time, we love to drink a nice roasty, warming brown ale too.
Yeah, totally. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of awesome things going on, a lot of fun things to look forward to, maybe too. Do you have any new brewing projects that you're working on? Anything in the future you can tell us about?
Yeah, I think coming up next, I think probably be this month and then into March. Just kind of a nice, fun thing that it's for us to realize. So, it's been really cool to see the popularity of lagers and pilsners. It really take off in the last 2-3 years or so. We did a couple that first year or two and did events, where it was a lager release or a pilsner release, and other brewers would come onto them, brewing industry people would come out and enjoy those, but they weren't really big events in terms of bringing out a crowd of just consumers. And that's changed so much in the last 2 or 3 years. It's really been just gratifying and cool and fun to see how much kind of beer nerds and like us, like everyone, are into lagers and crisp pilsners these days, just because, we love drinking them and we love, making them too. So now it's like when we get to brew them, it's like, this is great. This is what we love to be doing. And we know it's going to find, it'll find a home. It'll find its people too, once we get it out there, because we were never sure about that part before. So we have a couple coming out. We have one that's a rice lager that should be kind of first out of the gate, which I think is just gonna be called Torn Label Gold. And then we have another that's returning, a Czech style Pilsner called Nice Driveway. Which just came about because one of the tap room that your green screen in front of, it was designed and built by a local artist woodworker named Peter Warren. And when he was, he has a story about when he was in Prague, just, going everywhere, going to bars and drinking pilsners from bar to bar with a friend of his. And, doing the traditional Czech toast, na zdrowie. And a friend, they went to 5 or 6 places who, didn't realize that that's the actual traditional toast. And at a certain point, after hitting a dozen or half dozen or so spots, he was like, what's going on with a nice driveway toast all the time? So we just thought we should memorialize that with by calling the beer Nice Driveway.
That's amazing. That's hilarious.
That's so wonderful. So you mentioned that before you moved to the KC area, you were living in Southern California, and shamelessly, I looked up your IMDb because I assumed that you were probably involved in the film industry, and it turns out you were.
I was, yes.
Would you like to tell? Do you have any interesting stories from your time in the film world that you'd love to share?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It is a weird path for sure that I had from, film to craft beer. It's not one that immediately jumps out as a straight line. Yeah, and honestly, I never really did foresee a career change. I went to, I grew up in Kansas City, but I went to film school, and then I have been working as a producer, producing independent films for a good 6 or 7 years. And really, what kind of initially, to be honest, sparked my appreciation and love for great beer was my first film after graduating film school was I was an executive producer on a film called Paris Je t'aime, which very happy with, very proud of that film. It's an anthology film with 20 different segments directed by 20 different directors. So we had segments by Wes Craven, Tom Tickford, Gus Van Sant, Coen Brothers. It starred Natalie Portman, Steve Buscemi, Elijah Wood, Nick Nolte. So a lot of those super cool people in it.
Wow.
So it was, produced and shot in Paris for over the course of about a year, and, great experience, loved working on it. At that time I was, certainly, much younger, and I enjoyed good beer. I was not especially well-versed or an expert by any means in craft beer or international beer or at that point. And, obviously in Paris is wine country. So I was drinking lots of wine and enjoying that. But every now and then I missed having a good beer, and so as a variation or just kind of a change up for instead of a glass of wine, I would seek out the few places at that time that had interesting beer selections. And at that time in Paris, if you want to drink good beer, you were drinking Belgian beer. So that kind of really opened me up to the world of the Belgian breweries and Trappist ales. And there are some places that are just really amazing in terms of having a great kind of Belgian kind of cave atmosphere and you could find, the greats from, Orval and Chimay and even West Belgium at certain times. And of course, you're close enough proximity to be able to travel to Belgium and visit some of those places, and Cantillon and others like that at the time, which was again amazing and life-changing. And at that point, there was certainly no turning back in terms of how the chord that beer had struck in me. So it really kind of awaken this love for beer that is beyond anything that I kind of knew that I had in me. Then I moved to Los Angeles and continued working, produced some more films after that for another 5 or so 6 years in LA. It was great. Still happy with that, but still, LA is great, but the proxy at the time, LA's gotten better, but San Diego was kind of where it was at for great craft beer. So it certainly was hitting the scene down there on a very regular basis. And that was, really kind of cool to be not really a part of, but just kind of discovering and to kind of seeing, developing at that time. And after a certain point, I have a business partner that I worked with on several different films, and he has a family background in beer on the wholesale side, and he kind of knew of my sort of interest in passion for knowledge of the craft beer industry at that point. And he and I started talking about if there was any interest that I had in potentially working with him on something that he would be an owner or co-founder that was not a film, but that was craft beer related. And, I had never, worked in the industry. I didn't really have any specific, knowledge or anything like that. But if somebody asks you if you might want to start a brewery, the laws of the universe basically require you to say yes to that question.
I agree.
So
yes.
I said, of course, yeah. And so I brought in Travis Moore, who was our other co-owner, because he was the most talented home brewer that I had known in all my times in kind of the beer circles at that time. And he was a friend from back in Kansas City. The big kind of ways we would stay in touch was that, we'd come back as often as we could, but especially around the holidays and New Year and wherever we were living. At times I was living in Paris, LA, or New York. At times he was mostly in, Chicago, Paris himself as well. we would just bring in whatever beer we couldn't get back home and share it with each other and with friends and family and crack those open. And that kind of, is how that friendship started. And then he kind of went on to become just a really incredibly creative and wonderful home brewer. And I really felt he kind of had the knowledge and chops to kind of take it up a notch to the next level. So I asked if he would be interested in working together on a business plan for whatever this might look like. And he was at the time finishing up law school in Chicago. So it was also a very, huge change in career and life and geography for him as well. And, he would tell the story better than I could, but, at the time that we worked on that blueprint for a while, we got the go ahead from our other kind of co-owners, investors. Very exciting after a long time, and that kind of happened literally the same day that he got the offer from his kind of dream law firm in Chicago as he was finishing up law school. So it was a real fork in the road moment for him. But love of craft beer won out, so we both moved back to our hometown and started to Lable. Like I said, 7 years ago.
Wow. So like Hollywood pretty much led you right into craft beer, although they're not direct paths. I do have to say I'm disappointed when you mentioned the Coen brothers. I thought your route back to beer was going to be like Joel and Ethan were big hop heads, and they were like, here, I smuggled some Stone Rio Nation over here.
If only, that was the Parisian Tent was great. I love the film, but the one downside of it was there were so many cool people on it, but there were short 5-minute segments. So I didn't get that much time to hang out with any one person on there, but who knows?
Still cool.
Yeah, totally. So we know so much more about Kansas City now than we did 3 weeks ago. And there's a lot to do there. What would you say your ideal day off in Kansas City is? What would you do?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I'll probably answer it in a couple ways, because it's like, there's, for me in terms for my day off, but then there's also the stuff that's in my head. It's like, wow, if I was visiting, where would I really want to make sure people don't miss? And if you haven't been to KC and if you're just kind of in town for a little bit, I would really say the Negro League Baseball Museum is fantastic. It's really world class. They've done a really impressive job with it, and it's the history, the collection, everything is super on point there. It's easy to do too. It's 18th and Vine. The Jazz District is only a half mile from the Crossroads, so you can easily do a great brewery crawl after you do that. That's just like I said, right down the street. And then Crossroads breweries. There's so many. Like I said, that there are. There's not a lot of better ways to spend a Saturday afternoon if it's nice out than hitting up 6 or 7 spots in the area. And honestly, really not just breweries. There's also KC Wineworks, and there's Lifted Spirits Distillery, Tomstown Distillery, and Mean Mule American Agave Spirits. So really a fun scene up there. And then so for me, the Nelson Museum is also one that I love doing anytime. I think it's just one of the more underrated museums in the country in terms of the collection. It's free every single day of the year, which is super cool about it. And it's a beautiful setting. So that one is, it's hard to go wrong there.
Right. And that yard outside is beautiful. The sculpture garden.
Yeah, it's a great city front yard for everybody to kind of just
great place for a picnic too.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And then, food wise, obviously, barbecue is this thing that you're going to want to gravitate towards when you're in the city. There are so many contentious answers that there's no better way to start an argument than if you're visiting KC than to go into a bar and ask for a recommendation, because, you'll get overlap, but a lot of very passionate answers from people who will, argue that one.
You all know my opinion on Kansas City barbecue at this point. I'm a Jack Stack loyalist.
Okay, fair enough. I'm still a formerly Oklahoma Joe's. It's still Oklahoma Joe's
Okay.
to me. Casey Joe's officially now. I think it's still,
Right.
and that was literally just what I was talking about with my girlfriend was before this the Zoom was like, I think we need to go to Oklahoma Joe's this week. It's been too long. That one's worth doing. I always love, dinner wise. There's a place in nearby around downtown in the West Side neighborhood called the West Side Local. And I think that's a great place to send people because their focus is really just as local as possible, just kind of keeping all the ingredients, the beer, the wine, the food and ingredients as locally sourced as possible. So it's a great way to just kind of get a handle on as much that's kind of from the area as possible. And it's just maybe my favorite restaurant too. So that's the one that I would default to. And then I guess maybe the last thing, going back to my background and still one of my favorite things, film and watching movies. I think we have one of the best movie theaters in the country, Screenland Armor, which is in North KC, so just north of the river, just north of downtown. They have an amazing film program that's independently run, and they just do the coolest stuff there between indie art house stuff, some larger stuff too, and also just like kind of great rep screenings that whatever seems fun and cool to bring back.
35 millimeter
they have a great
screenings.
selection of beer on tap there too, so you can keep on trying local beer.
Love a
It's
movie theater where you can get a beer.
Yeah.
Is it an actual film theater?
Yeah, film theater, and we've done actually like a fair amount, probably more collaboration beers with them than maybe anywhere else. We've done. So like whenever a movie comes out that looks fun for us, and we talk to Adam, Travis and I, and Adam's the owner of Screenland, and just think about a beer that might be loosely inspired by the movie, and then do a collaboration on it. We did one for all the Star Wars sequels. We just did one for Dune a little while back. Every now and then we invent one just because there's like a really very, very seldom or little seen indie movie from the like 2006 or 7 or so called Bellflower, which we all love, but nobody's seen. So we just thought, let's brew a beer about this so we can have an excuse to screen the movie, basically.
Totally.
We'll trade you this collab beer for a print of this movie.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, you've mentioned barbecue, you've mentioned jazz, things that Kansas City are pretty well known for. But what is one thing that you wished Kansas City was more well known for?
I would say coffee. The amount of coffee roasters that we have in town is, it's really impressive. And then it's been really kind of going and self-sustaining for a while now, really since I was kind of, and again, that's kind of, how this, in some ways, the whole thing came together is, again, Travis and I first met at a really kind of great coffee house that used to be around back in the day. There's a lot of roasters that are doing great kind of artisanal coffee that are really all, have great sourcing and really, really tasty and good spaces too. One of our year-round beers that I mentioned briefly, a beer called House Brew, which is in collaboration with one of our local roasters, just because, we love coffee nearly as much as we love beer. And we kind of wanted a coffee beer to be part of our year-round lineup. So so we thought that we'd do a coffee wheat stout. It's called House Brew. The kind of name is sort of a riff on the idea that the house brew at a place could be either the house cup of coffee or the house beer. It's with a local roastery called Thou Mayest. And we use their Ethiopian roast on that one. It's a cold pressed, cold extracted coffee. And like I said, it's a coffee wheat stout. So it's actually technically a wheat beer. It's over 50% wheat in the malt bill. So it gives it kind of a nicer kind of like soft, silky mouthfeel. It's not as kind of dense or heavy as some people expect a beer like that to be. That's one that we do all year round. And then we also kind of, like Screenland, we try to come up with an excuse to do a coffee collaboration whenever we can.
And Rafi, how do you make your coffee? Are you a pour over guy? Are you a French press guy?
I'm a pour over. Yeah, I've got I got an Eva Solo at home that I use. Which is really nice. I tend to have coffee more on the outside than I do at home, really just for the reason that I love all of our local coffee houses. So they do a great job, and I love being there and drinking their stuff.
Cool. I lived in Kansas City for a couple of years, and I was not into great coffee then. I've since learned better ways, but I did not know that about Kansas City. That is really exciting. I will have to check out that scene. I'm in Columbia, so I'm gonna
Okay,
I'm gonna check that out really soon.
Shortwave out there is one of my favorites too.
Yes,
Yeah.
mine too. Mine too. Go there every Saturday morning pretty religiously at this point. Okay, so Rafi, tell us, where can folks find Torn Label? Where can we find your beer? And where can folks find out more about your brewery?
Yeah, so we like I said, distribution wise, we keep it pretty tight right now. It's kind of, I don't want to say you have to come to KC to get us, but that's the best
But you
bet for sure.
should come to Kansas
Yeah,
City,
also you'll
is what you're saying.
yeah, it's primarily KC distributed. And like I said, despite the fact we have the tap room and now the public house, we still send out the vast majority of our beer to bars and restaurants and liquor stores. So we good amount goes in to some of our favorite restaurants and bars around the city, and we also, like I said, about half or so, 50% of our production is canned, and we'll send out to also bars and restaurants, but also liquor stores. So primarily you'll find us in KC. It'll get out there every now and then to places like Columbia, to not Columbia as much, but Springfield, Wichita, Lawrence, Topeka. But yeah, really, we kind of try to stick close to home and kind of focus on our home base.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Well, thank you so much, Rafi, for joining us. This was a great conversation. Thanks to MC for co-hosting. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Cheers.
Cheers.
And,
thanks guys so much.
Cheers, y'all. Yeah,
cheers.
thanks, Rafi.
We'll be back next week with our wrap-up of Kansas City. We've got a great IPA and a Vienna lager to cap off the month of February, and we'll be joined by a few guests from our featured brewery, Double Shift. Good night, everyone.
Night, y'all.